hey friends, if you are just joining us, if you have not been here the last couple of weeks or haven't tuned in online, we are in the middle of a series we are calling Unstuck. Anybody ever felt stuck before? Yeah, I felt stuck, right? And a space in my life where I we got Groundhog Day coming up here pretty soon. Anybody seen the movie Groundhog Day? You just relive the same day over and over and over, and I just can't, you just couldn't get traction, couldn't move forward. You know, the truth of the matter is there's sometimes these moments in our lives where we feel that Groundhog Day effect. We feel like, man, I'm trying to get some traction, I'm trying to go somewhere, but it feels like I keep waking up in the same routine over and over again. How do I move forward? And though the Bible, if you do a word search, you're not going to find the word unstuck, but you will find the word freedom. And I think that's the root of that ache in our heart, that place. Like I need some traction. I want to move forward. I don't want to be stuck back in this stuff. And you know, our theme verse has been John chapter 8, verse 36. It says, if the Son sets you free, you are truly free. And the crazy thing is many of us who've been in the faith, or maybe you accepted Christ a while, but maybe you've heard these things, or maybe you've been introduced to that topic. You're like, yeah, I believe that. Wait a second, but I don't live it. And I think there's a lot of things in the Bible that we believe, but we're not yet living. And there's this disconnect, this dissonance even within us. And so we're going to get practical today. So let's do a quick recap on how we got here. You know, we have to understand there's some foundational truths. If we want to begin to move towards living a life that's not stuck in old patterns. You know, we looked at that Hebrews chapter 12 the past couple of weeks, right? That it says, throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Man, I get entangled so easily. And it's usually the same old sins that keep on like tripping me up. And though we can identify some of these sin issues, there's oftentimes this everything else. What is the everything else? And if we want to learn how to live with a level of freedom, of lightness, don't you wish life could be a little lighter sometimes? I'm here to tell you, I think Jesus is here to tell you it can be. You know, he says, come to me all who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, right? For I'm gentle and humble at heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light, right? Like that's what freedom sounds like, right? Stuck is the opposite of that. And so there's some core foundational truths that we have to understand before we can even begin to like take steps towards like, where do we go from here, right? Before you practice. So we're going to get to the practical today, but we can't skip over some of the foundation. The key, I think, the whole thing is identity, right? Is identity. That for those of us, again, this is all dependent on the fact that we've surrendered our lives to Jesus. For those of us who've received the gift of salvation, who said yes to Jesus, for those of us who've come to that space, he says he adopts us into his family, calling us sons of God and daughters of God. This is the truest thing about us. And the world wants to send us a different message, doesn't it? The world wants to tell us a different message about ourselves, which I think is why this core truth is so important, because we have to know what is truly true and what is the truest thing. That even when I make mistakes, that doesn't make me a failure. It's still, at the core, I'm a son of God. Who's not perfect? I can handle that. But the enemy in my soul wants to tell me that I'm a failure, right? See, it's all kinds of things like this. Like we're going to hear these lies, and we'll get to that in a minute. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Identity, child of God. The other foundational truth is forgiveness, right? I wouldn't be a child of God if it weren't for the forgiveness that was granted to me, right? And the Bible is rich with texts that remind us that if we don't forgive other people, like it undermines our own salvation. He says, if in the same way that you forgive others, like I will forgive you. Like that's scary scripture, right? Unforgiveness is not a trait of followers of Jesus. Like that, it's not. Like sometimes we think it's optional. Like I got saved, I gave my life to Jesus, but I'm gonna hold on to all this stuff, and maybe someday I'll get to a point where but I just can't right now quite forgive that. That's not actually how this works. Forgiveness is something that you receive and give freely. And so many of us are stuck in a variety of places, in sin issues, in fear traps, in lies that we're believing, in wounds that keep us frozen and paralyzed, in insecurity that doesn't allow us to move forward. We're stuck in so many of these, and many of them are rooted in the fact that we've not yet forgiven those who have offended us. It is the core of the gospel. Jesus didn't say, come and learn all the information I'm teaching you. He said, come and follow me. Come do what I do. And in the same way you've received forgiveness, you've got to release it as well. You will stay stuck. You will not move forward. You will not experience full freedom. You will not experience what Jesus describes in John 10:10. I've come to you to have life and have it to the fullest. You will not experience that fullness of life while holding on to unforgiveness. Like just bottom line, you won't. And so many of us, we are stuck in our own unforgiveness and holding ourselves back because we're not walking in the model, the example of Jesus. And so these are core aspects. We can't move forward unless we recognize our identity. You are a son or a daughter of God. If you've received the gift of image, and that's beautiful. Now, if you haven't, you've been made in God's image, and that's beautiful. But we have to surrender our life. We have to surrender our heart. We have to surrender everything to the person of Jesus. And he says, in that moment, we become sons and daughters of God. So identity as a child of God, foundation is forgiveness. And then one of the biggest obstacles, like some of the biggest obstacles, like, because that's the thing, like maybe even I've received this gift of salvation. I know who I am in Christ. I'm a son of God above all else. I know I mess up, but man, my identity is secure. I know I want to try to earn my value, but that's not how I earn it. It is simply because I know who I am. There's my identity. That's where my value comes from, right? I got that on lock. I'm forgiving people as often as offenses come to mind, as often as you hurt me, I'm going to forgive you. I'm doing all that. And yet still, there's sometimes these things that trip me up and keep me stuck. And that's what we talked about last week, is there's these fears, these obstacles of freedom, these fears that we have that are often tied to the same hurts and the things that we have to forgive. But things happen in life that cause us to be a little bit insecure or unsure about the things that we're facing now. And then what happens is the enemy of our soul comes in and begins to whisper things to our minds, right? And now, if we're not secure in our identity, we begin to listen to these lies that are questioning my identity. And so we have to identify the fears and the fears that we're living into and these lies that we're believing so that we can begin to confront these obstacles with truth. The best way to confront a lie is with truth, right? And so when we know who we are and we've released through forgiveness those who've offended us, there's very few lies that the enemy can throw our way that will ever stick, right? Okay, so we've done all this, okay? Our identity, boom, got it. Okay, I'm in, I'm secure, I'm going, let's do it. I'm not perfect, but I got this down. Forgiveness, okay, I'm forgiving people. There's probably still some people that I'm not thinking about, but for the most part, as I'm thinking about it, let's do it. I'm going, there's some obstacles, but I'm a fighter, man. I'm gonna fight with truth. There's no weapon formed against me that'll prosper. Let's go. Now we've all got all excited and we've done it and now we've gone to church, but then after we're done here, you're gonna have to go home. And I don't know about you, but I've fallen in the trap at different seasons of my life where I was full of faith on Sunday, usually somewhere after about 2 songs, hitting the 3rd song I've gotten through all my stuff. And now I'm like, whoo, yeah, Jesus, let's go, right? The message comes and I'm like, let's change the world. And then Monday hits and I'm like, done, it's gone. And then we just repeat week after week, right? How do we know the principles of freedom, of identity, of my foundation being in forgiveness, of the obstacles that are coming my way? How do I wake up tomorrow morning equipped to continue to stay in a lifestyle of freedom? rather than just this moment that I experienced when truth was brought to my attention. Now listen, here's how freedom works. And we use this word freedom. It can be interchanged, just like spiritual growth. Because God's heart for you is not just that you would become knowledgeable about the Bible. I think that's a misconception that a lot of Christians have. Like, the more Bible you learn, the more spiritually deep you are. And there may be a correlation, but it's not a one-to-one connection. You could memorize the Bible and actually spiritually deteriorate, right? Are we walking in the freedom and the fullness that Christ intended for us to live in? He says, I've come to you to have life and have it to the full. Do you have more life today than you did a year ago? I didn't say, are you happier and are your circumstances easier? I'm saying internally, do you have more life? That's growth. That's spiritual growth. But it's wild how a lot of Christians, it's almost like a bell curve, right? Like, maybe not even bell curve. Like, you get saved and all of a sudden usually the life meter's like way up here. You're like, yeah, I love Jesus. And why is it do we hit a point where like all of a sudden, like, I know more information, but I don't have more life? That's not the plan that's not spiritual maturity for sure. And it's not the plan and desire of God for your life. God, he desires like now granted, excitement is not the measure of spiritual growth either, right? But the internal goods. Kind of like when you first get married, there's an excitement level, but the excitement level may not always be there, but the depth of love has the ability to grow, right? Even when the excitement, hopefully there's still some excitement, but anyway, but that's what our spiritual is like. God wants us to grow deeper, not just in knowledge, but in the life that he offers. So let me ask you, are you growing deeper in the life that he offers? Here's some good tests. Does joy come more naturally than it did a year ago? Does love come easier than it used to back then? Does peace a more constant reality in your life than before? You see, we want to measure our spiritual depth and maturity by things like how many quiet times did I have this week, or how many times did I read my Bible, or how much of the scripture am I familiar with? Can I give a thematic outline of the Old Testament, right? Like, those are important things, only to the degree they lead to greater life. Does that make sense? And so we talk about freedom, and this is what we're talking about. You want to be unstuck. Part of the reason we get stuck is we have the wrong goals in our spiritual journey. The goal is not to mark the box that you prayed more days. The goal is not to say fewer cuss words. The goal is not to help more old ladies across the street. You see where I'm getting? Do all those things. Those are great. Those are great things to do. Do them all. The goal is freedom. The goal is for my heart to live with a level of lightness and joy and underwriting peace. The goal is to be able to love at the drop of a hat instead of instantly filtering every experience through how it affects me. This is the goal of the spiritual life. Doesn't this sound better than much of what has been sold to us for a long time? Something that's real. So, what I want to talk about now, because how do you do this, right? That sounds philosophically, that's wonderful, okay? But what does it mean? Okay, this is how you got to go do it. Go pray more and read your Bible more and do more Bible studies, right? But how do you get there? Can I give? I believe 4 habits of a freedom lifestyle. Okay. Now these aren't the only 4 habits you should have in your spiritual journey, right? But I'm just saying, here are 4 habits. Anybody want to walk this out? There are 4 habits of a freedom lifestyle, not just a moment. The moments are good. Here's how the journey in spiritual growth happens, or our freedom journey, if you will, happens. Like, it happens in moments and in processes. That's how God designed it to happen. but you rarely have the moments without the process. Right? The moment you commit to the process is the moment where you will unexpectedly have moments with God where he brings clarity and freedom and lightness and joy and new revelation. But it's not usually when we're off doing our own thing. It's usually when we've submitted ourselves to a process of becoming more like Jesus. Does that make sense? But it happens in moments. I can think of so many moments in my Christian life where God grew me up quick, where he offered a level of freedom. My eyes were open. There's a fresh revelation. Those are awesome moments, but they typically always happen on the journey. So, where do we begin? How do we start? So I'm gonna give us 4 habits of a freedom lifestyle. Number 1, you guys ready for it? Okay, here we go. For the rest of you, you get it whether you're ready or not. All right. Number 1. Oh, it's already up there. I was going to say, you're going to love it and hate it at the same time. There's no principle that I can think of that everyone that I know both loves and hates simultaneously. Number 1, slow down. Slow down. Slow down. You know, one of the 10 commandments says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And I know that's Old Testament, it's Old Covenant law, right? And I've heard a lot of people, wonderful people, say we don't have to keep the Sabbath today because that's Old Testament, that's the law. Okay. Let's pretend it was never written in the law. I will still make a crazy strong argument for why the Sabbath is near and dear to God's heart without the law. I think that's the part we miss. He put it in the law because it was near to his heart. As a New Testament follower of Jesus, I want to do whatever is in God's heart. I know I'm not under the law. I'm not compelled by a set of religious rules in order to be closer to Jesus. I don't have to do that. I don't have to do that at all. Right? I'm not under the law. But I want to know what's in the heart of God. And I see this from cover to cover, this principle of taking a day of rest every week. And that feels, just take a day off? Yeah, take a day off. Just don't do any work. In fact, it was so important to him that he put it in his top 10 list. Like, think about that. Like, we think of it as, oh, that's law. Like, I think of it like these are the 10 most important things to God at that point of time in history. Like, that's important. And there's a variety of ways to do this, right? Like the goal is not to make it a new law. In fact, Jesus, now in the New Testament, Jesus says, Sabbath, man was not made for Sabbath, as if it's some kind of like holy thing that we have to like bow down and serve this Sabbath and do it this certain way. But he says, but rather Sabbath was made for man. Sabbath, one day off a week, is a gift from God to you. And that if you receive that gift, your life will be better. Now, if you start this week for the very first time in your whole life to try to take a full Sabbath day where you do no work, and this is not a message on Sabbath, so we can talk about that later, but that's going to be hard, but you'll build a habit and a lifestyle of it, and it will be refreshing. Most good things start hard. Working out, having big muscles starts very difficultly. Having the waistline you want starts very difficultly. Right? Right? Having the knowledge and the intellect or expertise in a certain field starts very difficultly, but the payoff is always worth it. So, Sabbath, rest. Now here's the deal. I'm going to take broad strokes in the Sabbath thing. The core principle tied up in the Sabbath is rest. So maybe you're like, right this second, I can't. Like I have to be too many places. I can't take an entire day off. Well, okay, practice the principle. Break your day up into sections of 3. Morning to lunch, lunch to dinner, dinner to bed. Can you find a third of a day to say, I'm not going to do any work. I'm going to do things that are refreshing to my soul. I'm going to listen to the voice of God, and I'm going to be filled up afterwards. Just do it. Because I don't believe you can actually live in the fullness of the life with God without doing this. Like, I genuinely believe that. We are suckers for hurry and busy and frantic and production. All we have to produce. Right? Even in the way we greet each other. How are you doing? Oh, I'm busy. Like, it's almost a badge of honor. Right? If you ask me how I'm doing, I'm like, I did absolutely nothing. I didn't lift my finger to do an ounce of work yesterday. You would say, you are lazy, while secretly being jealous, right? God gave you not only permission, but the gift of doing no work once a week. Find a way to implement that into your weekly schedule. And here's the deal. If you've already done that, let me challenge you to the next step. Do it every day. Now, I don't mean never work, okay? 7 Sabbaths is a bad week, okay? Implement ideas. Like, for instance, my quiet time shifted for me personally years ago when I realized that this is not something I went and did for God, but it was an invitation to rest with God. My prayer life changed when I realized I didn't have to perform for him. My Bible reading changed when I realized it doesn't matter how much I read. I was just resting in the presence of God and listening to his word. It changed everything. Slow down. And just in case you need some proof text, Hebrews chapter 4 is amazing. Speaks right to this issue. Chapter 4, verse 1 says this, let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest. He's specifically talking about Sabbath. Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest so that no one will perish by following the example of the disobedient Israelites in Egypt. And then down in verse 9 it says, there remains then, just in case we're not sure if this is for New Testament, this is in the New Testament. There remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. Like, this is a gift of God to you. People who walk in the fullness and the freedom of Christ that he has made available to you, practice this regularly. Period. And the reason why, maybe like that's way too strong, but here, we're gonna build on this because everything else, the next 3 are very, very difficult to do if you don't build this into your routine. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Let's move on to number 2. Second habit. The second habit of a freedom lifestyle is that we have to consume truth. Now, this is an interesting one. You know, most habits that we have in life, they're all about adding something to our life, right? If I want to make a habit of reading, I'm doing that so that I can gain knowledge. If I want to add exercise as a habit, I do it so that I can gain muscle, right? Or fitness. If I want to add diet to my life and do some diet things, I do it even like, oh, that's not adding, that's losing, right? Like, that's losing the stuff I don't. Yeah, but the only reason you're losing is to add something. You're adding energy. You're adding mobility. You're adding health, right? Usually most of the habits that we have are so that we can add something to our life. Consuming truth, I believe, though it does add something, I think its greatest value is actually the absence of a negative. Let me give you an example. A number of years ago, like right now in January, Beth and I, along with a handful of other friends, and some of you in here are doing this with us, and another 1,000 people in Lincoln, are doing this initiative, this challenge that the running company downtown, the running company sponsors, and it's called Launch Your Toughness. And what it is, and I really do love it, what it is a challenge to walk or run 1 mile outdoors every day in January. And if you do it every single day, you'll get a t-shirt that never fits. And it's great. But you get entered into drawings and you can win stuff, prizes, and all kinds of stuff. But I did it once just because, it's a fun challenge to do with friends and be outdoors, and it's January and you feel tough when you're walking in sub-zero weather and whatever. It's actually terrible. And And this year has been awesome. Like yesterday was like truly the first hard day, maybe Friday, Saturday was maybe the first 2 hard days. The rest of them has been great. Dress well and it's fine. But there's years where you get an early blizzard, the sidewalks are covered in ice just constantly, and it's below zero the whole month, and you're just like, I hate my life. Why am I doing this? This is terrible. Why did I say yes? But I'm peer pressured. I can't quit now, and the whole thing. The first year we did it, like, okay, that was the thing that we did. Second year came around, one of our other friends was like, hey, we're doing that again? Sure. I need, maybe the shirt will fit this year. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Like, it's a running thing. I'm not exactly built like the standard typical runner. Like those shirts are not made for 6'6", 250. Anyway, so maybe it'll fit you if you do it next year. All right. But the reality is, like, I didn't really want to do it the second year. It was the second year that something caught my attention, and I hadn't not noticed the first year. So I did it again in January, and then, like, March rolls around, and I realized something. I didn't deal with, like, seasonal depression in February and March. I always do, in some degree. I always just get bummed out, tired, like, and then I was like, wait. For 2 straight years, I had more life and energy going into the spring than I'd ever had before. Could it be that the running company knows what they're talking about and being outside for 10 to 20 minutes a day, even when it's miserable out, is actually good for me? Wow, what if I continued that into February? I've had that thought for about 8 years straight now. It hasn't happened yet. But I say that to say this, like, the value add because of this discipline wasn't that I got better at walking outside in the cold. Like that, I didn't need that skill, okay? There was no huge value add. The value was the absence of a negative. And it didn't happen that day because I hated it that day almost every time. But 2 months later, I was very grateful, not for that one time I did that one thing, but for the pattern that I had established through a season that I needed the extra discipline. So let's come back to number 2. Consume truth. Consume truth. I could have said read your Bible, and that would hit on a lot of fronts, but the reality is we live in this content consumption culture, right? I mean, sometimes you don't notice things that are going on in your culture until you like rewind 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. Compare this culture to that culture and you're like, oh yeah, they didn't consume content like that. They didn't have content, right? 200 years ago. Like if you wanted to see a story played out in front of you, you didn't just flip your thumb every 6 seconds. You had to go to a play where people like practice, like, you know what I mean? Like there was, if you wanted music, you needed somebody who knew how to learn how to play an instrument and play an instrument for you. And then you're like, man, that's so good. It probably wasn't even that good, right? But we have experts and professionals and the best of the best at our fingertips, and so and now this is an indictment on our culture. It's just an assessment, right? Let's just be realist. Like this is the culture we live in. We're in a content consumption culture. I don't necessarily know that it's inherently bad. It's just where we're at. But I will say this: what we put in matters, and I don't care how much we say, like, oh, that doesn't affect me. Maybe not today. And so it's not even about, like, yes, part of it is about paying attention to the content we're putting in, the negative stuff. But it's not just that. Part of it is just like, are we putting the quality content in? What if we did a simple habit of switching maybe one time during the week, or maybe in my commute to wherever I go on a regular basis, I decided to listen to worship music instead of even the radio. It doesn't have to be bad stuff. I'm not addressing stuff that is violent and vulgar. And no, I'm just talking like there's content, like we're feeding our mind non-stop. It could be amoral, but what if we just like stopped feeding our mind for a minute? Let our mind breathe for 1 second. Or what if we put something that actually helped transform my mind out of the culture of consumption and towards the direction of the freedom and the fullness of the life that God intended for me? In fact, that's not my concept. I don't know if you thought that was. It's not really original with me. Paul said, the apostle, in Romans 12, he said, don't be conformed to the pattern of this world. The pattern of this world is content consumption, right? Good, bad, and different. Remember back in the day when you had like maybe 1 or 2 shots to get the news in a 1-hour dose? And there were some people like, why do you need to watch the news twice today? And now some of you have already checked the news since service started. Like, we'll just call it like it is. This many people, I know what's happened. I know it. Somebody has already checked their feed. Content consumption. What if we chose to slow down for a second to shut the mindless inundation of our mind off for a second so that because sometimes like just even quiet, like we are so familiar with the voice of the world speaking into us that merely shutting that off is uncomfortable for us. How in the world are we supposed to hear the voice of the Holy Spirit when the voice of the world never stops talking in our ear? So we got to slow down, and then we got to like consume truth. What are you putting in? And Christian friend, I just want to. If you're the answer to the thing that's already stirring inside of you is this, it's not that bad, then you're asking the wrong question and making the wrong defense. I didn't say stop doing all the bad content. I said, what if we put truth in? See, the amoral neutral stuff is still forming our minds to the pattern of this world. But Paul tells us, do not be conformed to it. If you are emotionally dependent on any certain content flow into your life, you need to go on a fast. I'm going to say that again. If you are emotionally dependent, it could even be good. If you are emotionally dependent to any certain content stream into your life, you need to go on a fast. We have to learn, friends, if we're going to walk in the freedom of Christ, we have to be learning to put content that moves us in the direction of God, that transforms. Not just stop conforming, but also transforms our way of thinking into the way that God thinks. Because we will be transformed when our minds are renewed in the truth. Friends, we have to do some evaluation. We have to do some evaluation. What is coming in? Not is it bad or not, I don't care. Is it truth? I said we're doing 4 habits of freedom lifestyle, but we're doing 3 habits of freedom lifestyle. Change your notes, I won't keep you here all day. All right. Number 3. This one feels a little bit different. I'll explain. It's simply this: heart checks. Heart checks. The other ones were like verbs, things that we're supposed to do, right? The other things like slow down and consume truth. This one is just heart checks. That's it. And here's what I mean. This one, first of all, builds on the slowing down. It's dependent on the slowing down. You can't do it without slowing down. But the reason I didn't say check your heart is because that's something that you and I have heard said to us 1,000 times. And what you're going to hear if I said check your heart means you're going to take about a 3.5 second inventory of your heart. But I'm good. I'm not talking about checking your heart. I'm talking about doing a deliberate heart check. And here's what I mean. This is something that should be a part of our normal spiritual lives. And so I'm gonna tell you what I mean by this. And so if you're not taking notes, I'd suggest this is a good place to start because I'm gonna give some really, really practical things that will be very helpful to reference later. Or even have your phone out. I'm gonna have most of my notes on the screen. You can take a picture of them. But let's start here. Psalm chapter 139, verse 23 and 24. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Search me, know my heart. Here's the thing. Like, that's a nice prayer, but you got to do a little bit of work yourself. Okay? Search me, know my heart, that's fine, but I'm not going to slow down to even pay attention to what's going on in my own heart. This implies that David has already searched his own heart. God, I've searched my heart, but Lord, do a deep dive with me. Is there anything anxious? What's underneath the anxiety? Sometimes it's like, I'm anxious, and that's the end of the story, right? No, what's causing some of this anxiety? Is there anything that offends you, God? See, that's a great question, as opposed to, it's not that bad. That's the wrong question. God, is there anything that offends you in what I'm putting in? I'm trying to put in truth. Is there anything that I am putting in that offends you? Is there anything that I'm doing consciously or subconsciously that offends your heart? Right? Psalm 139. Here's what heart check is all about. It means slowing down. This is something that I would encourage everyone to do at some point this week. Carve out a little bit of time, 30 minutes. Give yourself 30 minutes. It could take 2 hours, but give yourself at least 30 minutes. Maybe it's in your quiet time, okay? But remove distractions. Slow down. Get to a place your mind is not racing. And then here's the whole point. There's one simple question that you really have to ask, but I'm going to break it down a little bit. The one simple question is this: how is my heart really? How is my heart really? See, how's your heart feels like a deeply emotional question, but we often just quickly flip by that. If we have a friend who's close enough and real enough with us that may ask that question, hey man, how's your heart? Man, I'm doing all right, I'm doing good. Maybe you talk about some of the circumstances that are, struggling this or that, but I'm doing all right, how's your heart? No, we're not stopping there, we're going deep. No, like for real though. How's your heart really? And here's how you get to it. The same foundational truths that freedom is built on. What's the first one? Identity. So let's ask some questions. Write these questions down. Here's some questions. Am I striving to earn my value? Listen, I'm not saying do this with a friend. I'm saying do this by yourself. In the quietness and the stillness of your own heart and in your own room, in your own time. Be honest enough to get real with yourself. Am I striving to earn my value? Are there circumstances or relationships or things in my life where I'm constantly like feeling like I have to earn, like I have to produce, like I have to be somebody? I've got to put on the mask. I've got to, in order to be liked or appreciated or valued. Friends, that simply means we're not living out of our identity in Christ. Am I striving? Ask the question, get real. Second, am I secure? Where's my next one? Sorry. Am I secure in my identity as a child of God? Okay. Am I striving to be something? And two, am I secure in my identity as a child of God? So that means even if the world is upside down, even if I've faced loss or hurt or all kinds of things, regardless of what the circumstances are around me, am I secure in my identity? It doesn't mean I can't be sad. It doesn't mean I can't grieve, but is my identity secure in the person of Jesus even when everything else seems like it's all upside down? How's my heart really? How's my identity? Second one, forgiveness. Are there any offenses that I need to let go of? And or people I need to forgive? Now, honestly, these two questions are inherently tied. You can't answer yes to one and not the other. But sometimes one will trigger in your mind before the other. Is there an offense that you need to let go of? Maybe you're like, man, I've forgiven everybody, but there's this offense that keeps on popping up. Well, that means we need to walk through forgiveness one more time. Or maybe there's a person that comes to mind, and there's not necessarily a particular offense, but like their face comes to mind, like I know I still need to forgive that person, but you haven't thought through of the specific things that you need to forgive them for. Friends, it's time to walk through some forgiveness again. God, I choose to let go of this offense, and I forgive them. I leave them in your hands. God, I choose to let go. See, this process could take a minute. As offenses come to your mind, write them down. As people's names come to your mind, write them down. And after you've got a list, begin to walk through them out loud, verbally, so you can hear yourself offer them forgiveness. God, I forgive so-and-so for the offense that they have done to me. I let it go. It's not in my control anymore. God, I give it to you. Father, I forgive my father and my mother. I forgive my spouse. I forgive my boss for this hurt that they have done to me, or this thing that they have hurt me from. I offer it to you. I give it up to you. I let go. Now there's things, listen, we talk about freedom as a moment, a process. There's things that you might do this with for multiple times. You've let it go, but life has a tendency, and other things that happen have a tendency for you to pick that offense back up again. It's a deliberate choice regularly to let it go, to clear your heart of all that stuff. The third one, fears and lies. Here's a couple more questions. What am I afraid of now? And what lies am I believing right now? Those lies are typically about your identity. And so this could be connected to even that first point, that first question. What fears do I have right now? What are the things that are afraid of me? Man, do I choose to trust God? What lies am I believing right now? Now I'm going to begin to combat those lies with the truth like we talked about last week. Friends, I'm telling you, the people that I know, and I would argue that the people that you know that walk in the greatest levels of freedom and lightness and love, joy, and peace do some form of this with some regularity. I promise you. Maybe this is new, maybe it's not. But friends, we have to get to a place where we can be real. We live so fast, so produced. We live so hurried that many of us actually are very, very uncomfortable with the quietness of our own hearts because we're afraid of what shows up there. But if we don't go there, we will never walk in the freedom that God intended for you to walk in. We're going to find ourselves getting stuck on the same things over and over again. Friend, we don't have to stay stuck. Jesus said he came that we could have life and have it at the fullest. So what step do you need to take this week? Maybe you just start with slowing down. Maybe you need to evaluate your intakes and you just need to figure out, am I consuming truth? Or maybe for you, you're like, okay, it's time for a heart check. I need to get real. I need to be honest with myself and God, and I'm going to invite God into this process. And God, here's my heart. See, test me. Is there anything anxious? God, where's that coming from? Is there anything offensive? God, check my heart so that I can live in the freedom and the fullness that you've made available to me. What's your next step?